Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga, Birth, Babies. If you're a parent, I would bet helping your child grow and develop and hit their milestones is something that you're thinking about a lot. So our guest is an occupational therapist who focuses on sensory play for babies. She's going to go over what is sensory play, why is it important for your babies, how do we integrate sensory play into our daily playing. She talks about the different senses. There's 8. I thought there were 5. There's actually 8. So you'll learn those 3 hidden senses. And then towards the end of our conversation, we talk about the importance of toys. What kind of toys we introduce to our babies and our children have an impact on their development and their sensory awareness. So little secret here, less is more. Without batteries, even better. So you can, on our show notes, you're going to see a whole list of toy companies and places that our guest recommends. So check those out. No affiliation to them. We're just supporting toys that we think can help your baby's development. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about our guest. So Dr. Allie Ticktin is an occupational therapist specializing in sensory integration. Allie is the founder of Play to Progress and the author of the book, Play to Progress. Lead your child to success using the power of sensory play. Allie has a lot of really great down-to-earth information that as a parent, I think you're going to find super valuable. Now, before we get to my conversation with Allie, I always like to give a little what's going on at the studio rundown. So we still have our classes online 7 days a week, as well as in studio 6 days a week. We are chock full of workshops, childbirth ed, infant safety CPR, caring for a newborn, lactation prep, so many. And what's exciting at this point is not just are they offered in studio, but we have a full on-demand library, so you can check that out. We even have infant massage that we added not so long ago. So for those listening to this podcast, infant massage touch is really great for your child's development as well. So you can check all that out. Another part of what we offer at PYC is our teacher training. So we are well into our January, February teacher training online, and we're gearing up for our March, April in-studio training. We do that once a year in New York. So we have it 3 times a year online, once a year in New York. And then once a year, we also have an online postnatal teacher training. So if you're a yoga teacher and you're really passionate about supporting the perinatal community, and we have a very thorough training, go to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com, and check that out. You can find out some information. Of course, always reach out to me if you have questions. Last thing, and I'm putting this out because I know our community is incredibly smart and incredibly plugged in. If you have a topic I haven't covered yet, or a speaker, or maybe you're a great speaker and it would be great to come on the podcast, I'd love for you to reach out. We have an application that you can fill out. All this is on our website. And it's important because this podcast is for you. So if I have the speakers that you're interested in and topics you're interested in, it just serves us better to support you. And then an ask for us. If you're enjoying this podcast, we would love if you can take a moment to leave a rating and review so it can help people find us. Okay, I just want to say thank you. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Allie.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hi, Allie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to talk to you about OT and the work you do. So, full disclosure, my son has had OT since he was probably 3 or 4. I love occupational therapists. I was always fascinated when I would watch his lessons or just hear about them. So, I'm so excited to dive into this work. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I, of course, feel the same about OT.
All right, so let's jump into that. So I'd love to learn a little bit about you and what led you to being an occupational therapist.
That's a good question. So I always joke that OT chose me. I did not choose it. It truly is my calling from birth. I was always playing with kids, playing with baby dolls. Like baby dolls were my thing. And that's what's so important about play, right? A child gets to explore their interests. For me, that was very much baby dolls and children. I was also just very much a sensory kid. And so I think I always joke, I'm like, I was brought into this universe to be an OT. And so it really is my calling. To be honest, I had never heard of OT. And I thought I would be a pediatrician. And that's just likely because the child of a doctor. And I knew I wanted to work with kids. So you're like, okay, I guess it has to be pediatrician. I didn't know of another option. And then when I found OT, it was like, no, this is it. This is what I want to do. And that's how the journey started.
Oh, I love that. All right. So I know an occupational therapist is. So before we dive into sensory play for babies, can you describe what an occupational therapist is and what do they do? Because I think a lot of folks are familiar with physical therapists, but I don't know if they actually understand occupational therapy.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, different OTs do different things. So I'm a pediatric OT. But even within the pediatrics world, it can look very, very different. I specifically focus on something called sensory integration. There's a really good analogy. I think this was probably said to me in OT school. So I don't remember who I credit for this analogy, but it's PTs will get you to where you need to go, and OTs will help you do what you need to do when you get there. So what we mean by that is we're really all about function. What are the activities that you need to do in daily life? We call them ADLs. What is your occupation? Well, for a child, what is a child's occupation? Play. So much of what I'm focusing on is play. I'm focusing on their sensory system and how they play. So our sessions as pediatric OTs are often done through play because that is the work of childhood. Now, you may get a hand injury and go see a hand OT, and that's going to look very, very different. Or after a stroke, that's going to look very different. But in general, we're working back towards occupations. It happens to be in childhood. A child's occupation really is play.
All right. So if a parent is listening to this and they're like, well, of course I want my child to play. Do I need an occupational therapist to help that? So what are reasons that a child may work with an OT?
This is a good question. And I'm going to talk specifically here about the work that I do. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about sensory and sensory integration. So what we're focusing on is the sensory system. And I know we'll get into this a bit later in the podcast, but the 8 senses. So I'm looking at one, how is their body moving? Are they able to figure out the motor planning? Are they able to jump into the play? Do they have the postural support to sit in circle time and learn? Do they have the postural support and the motor planning, the strength to climb? All of these different things, are they able to take in their environment, process that information and use it? Or are they completely overwhelmed by their environment? Are they getting dysregulated? Something we really focus heavily on is emotional regulation here. So
Mm-hmm.
we're really focusing on what's happening inside their sensory system. How are they taking in all of the sensory input that's in their environment, and how are they able to effectively use it? Right. And
Yeah.
so that may look like some of our kiddos may have a really hard time with that. And yes, that's going to have a big impact on their play. It's going to have a big impact on their emotional regulation.
So how does a parent, so that is something. So my son has ADHD, and we've totally understood that emotional regulation is something we've worked on, and we've had great work with OT. But how does a parent recognize that they need that extra help? Like, are there things that they should be looking out for that says, oh, okay, I think that my child really benefit from additional support like OT?
This is a good question. And I wish there was a more straightforward answer. There's many, many checklists and signs and things like that
Okay.
on the internet. And I don't want parents to get lost in those either, because
Okay.
sometimes I will have parents come to me and they say, I found this checklist, and they're in an absolute panic.
Okay.
But what we're really looking at is, are they able to function to the best of their ability? And sometimes we may see, we're OTs and we're picking up on little things. We may see little nuances here and there, and it's not impacting them day to day. And that's okay. And it's in some of those cases, it's your choice. Like, do you want to work on this or not? You know? But where we see certain things, maybe your child is having really big tantrums and a really hard time calming down. Maybe they're having a lot of trouble jumping into play, tripping, falling a lot. Are they having trouble going to the playground and figuring out how to use all the new equipment? Or are they really sensitive to certain sensory inputs? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they become dysregulated. And the word dysregulation, I recognize not everybody uses. So I'm going to use a word that I don't typically use, and it just popped in my head to use it. So I guess I'll trust the universe here to use it. And it's hyper. So maybe after your child is in a bounce house or at a birthday party, they're so hyper they can't control their body. And what are they doing? They hit, they push. Maybe they don't even hit and they push, but they come in back and they have a massive meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these little things, what I tell parents is, I'm a very big believer in a parent's intuition. And so if you have this gut that there's something more here, follow it and
I like
really
that.
explore more. The other thing that I highly recommend is talk to your teachers. Teachers have seen many, many kids over the years, and they are sometimes the best resource. You can say, I'm concerned about this. What do you think? And reach out to an OT and see. Because one thing we
That
know, it's
makes
not going to hurt,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how does working with OT, so we've established that looking at behavior, looking at how easily they adapt. So how is working with an OT going to support a child's development?
Good question. So that's what we're focusing on, right? We're focusing on their
Okay,
development. I'm going to talk specifically on the sensory system right now. So the
great.
first 2 years of life, a baby is in what we call the sensory motor stage of development. So what does that mean? If you break down the word sensory motor, what are you thinking about? The sensory system and movement, right? I often
Mhm.
describe in my book, I have this diagram of a tree, and all the roots, each root, there's 8 roots, each is one of the senses. Okay. So our senses are really the roots to development. Our sensory system is so, so important. My argument is, we need to be focusing on this for all children, not just children that we're identifying a need for, but we really need, especially now in the day, like the age of technology and all these pieces of equipment that are getting popular, we need to be focusing on engaging a child's sensory system really early, because that's what's going to lay the foundation for development. that is when your baby is forming all these rapid neural connections, right? We want to help support them in forming those.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's go deeper into the different senses. So I'm sure most people know this, but can you review all the senses and how they impact growth and development?
Yeah. And many people don't know the hidden senses. And I always hate that they're called the hidden senses. And I think because I do this work and my dream is that they won't be hidden anymore. But we have our big 5 senses that we know, right? So I don't think we need to go over those. Those are the ones we've learned since elementary school. But then we have these other 3 senses. These are the 3 senses most people don't know. Sometimes they've heard of 1 or 2 of them, rarely all 3. But our first is our vestibular sense. This is essentially our sense of movement. A lot of people have heard of vestibular when it comes to like vertigo and balance. They don't quite understand, I find, that vestibular input, what the actual input is, which is any movement. But they've heard that word. The second is proprioception. This is my personal favorite sense. And this is essentially our body awareness. So it's our sense of where we are in space. Proprioceptive input is heavy work. So any kind of force against your muscles. So what I always joke, when I was first coming out of school, CrossFit was the biggest thing. It was so trendy, and I know it's gone down in trend a little bit, but I used to be like, CrossFit for kids, like pushing the laundry basket, things like that heavy work, carrying a heavy backpack. So that's going to be proprioceptive input. That input
like the blankets, like the weighted blankets.
Good question. So here we're getting a little nuanced. You will hear some people say, yes, that's proprioceptive input. Technically, deep pressure is not proprioceptive input.
Okay.
If you're getting, technical, but deep pressure is still very calming. Now, if you're carrying the weighted blanket and you're lifting it and putting it on top of something, then that is proprioceptive input. But just having it on top of you, that's deep pressure, which is still a great tool and very, very calming.
Okay.
But we're thinking of like that push, that force against your muscle, So our third hidden sense is called interoception. And if you want to know more about interoception, I always lead people to Kelly Mahler. She is really devoted her life and her work to interoception, but this is basically our internal awareness. We're learning so much more about this sense, but do I understand what that feeling in my body is? Maybe it's I have butterflies. Maybe it's I need to go potty. If I can't understand, if I don't feel that I need to go potty and don't understand what that feeling is, I'm never going to be able to potty train, right? But even beyond this, we feel our feelings in our body. Our body tells us things, and we need to be able to understand that.
This is so interesting because I'm thinking about all age ranges. I'm thinking about babies and toddlers, just like you said, understanding their bodies to know when, learn how to potty train, understand big tantrums. But I'm also relating this. My kids are a little older. I have a 9 and 12-year-old, and their internal awareness and identifying feelings as well. It feels like this isn't work just of babies. This is work of most people, I think,
Exactly.
most ages, in fact.
In fact, I would argue understanding your sensory system. So the reason I'm so passionate about we need to be doing this for all children, right? Not just when we identify a need, but this is really work that we need to be introducing young. For many reasons, I would love a study that's, looking at if we're introducing sensory, if we're introducing talking about the body, understanding what your sensory needs are, what your body needs are, and what your body is telling you young, what does that do for mental health when you get older? I can tell you my personal therapist one day said to me, I was describing how my body feels when I have anxiety, and I'm a big body feeler. And he looks at me and he's like, so do you ever use your own tips that you give to children? And I was like, oh, good point. And one night in the middle of the night, I finally just ordered a weighted blanket. And it changed a lot for me. And I started to recognize my body needs these tools and I need to take some of my own advice. So it's something I see all the time with parents. I can see them going, and making that connection when we're sitting in parent meetings talking about their child because they recognize that was them as a child. And maybe they got in trouble. It wasn't recognized,
Right. This makes so much sense. All right. I want to circle us back to babies because that's what I think a lot of our listeners listen to. So we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to talk about sensory play and babies. So we're going to be right back.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Okay, we're back. So I know we want to talk about sensory play, but I think a lot of folks are like, what exactly is that? So can you describe what is sensory play and why is it so important for babies?
This is my favorite question. So sensory play is kind of having a moment right now, which I love, of course, because I love all the talk about sensory play, but it's misunderstood what it is. So when parents hear the word sensory play, what they're often thinking about is tactile play. Mm-hmm. And yes, tactile play is a piece of sensory play, but it's not all of sensory play. Tactile play is really just this one piece. What sensory play really is, and of course, tactile play is a part of it, but it's play that engages all 8 senses. So remember, I said we have those 3 additional senses. Well, this is play engaging all of those 8 senses. What does that mean? Reminding you, again, they're in their sensory motor stage of development. So this is how they're creating the neural connections in their brain. It's play that's going to allow them to engage each of these senses. What that might look like, maybe they're hanging out in tummy time, right, in the living room while you're cooking, and they're smelling all of the aromas. Maybe they're hearing big siblings play. So think of that. Think of it as more than just tactile, a big one. Maybe they're going to the park and they're on the swing. No one recognizes that as sensory play. But guess what? It is. Just like when they begin to climb, I always joke with parents, I'm like, baby-proof the house, don't contain the baby. And what I mean by that is we need to let them explore their sensory system. What that means is we also need to let them move. So if we have them just in a playpen, they don't really have a lot of space in that playpen, right? So they're not really able to engage all their senses. So of course we want to put gates on the stairs and all things like this, but we still want to give them opportunity to climb, an opportunity to move. So figuring out how
what I'm hearing. So what I'm hearing, and I'm kind of interested in this. So you said let baby play, smell the aromas, listen to the parents. So it maybe not be quite as curated in play and a little bit more explorative. Am I understanding that right?
You hit the nail on the head. And thank you for saying that, because, when you go on Pinterest and you type in sensory play, sometimes it can look very stressful to build these beautiful sensory bins and all of these different things. And it can stress parents out. Like, how do I have time? I'm a working parent. How do I have time to curate these activities? It doesn't have to be curated. Go bring your baby and have tummy time in the grass. You know?
I actually really like this. I think back to when I didn't do this as much with my second. I feel a little badly. My first, I researched everything, every toy that came into the house. I had to research, is it good? Was it made out of? And I would sit there and be like, here are the blocks. We're going to play with blocks, and like really thinking about it. With my second, she kind of just had to come along, which probably was good for her in that sense. So maybe it's taking the stress, like you said, off of parents to have this perfect play space, and instead just be like, we are just staying home, and here are some toys, and I'm going to be here, and we're going to listen to some music, and you're just going to be, and I'm going to be. Am I kind of painting a picture?
Exactly. We do not want, even toddlers now are so overscheduled. We do not want, babies are overscheduled. You know, we don't want them to be overscheduled. We need to give them the space and the time to explore and move through development. This is extremely important. If we do not allow babies, the ability to spend time on the floor and spend time exploring, how are they going to meet their next milestone, right? Because they need time. They need to practice it. And sometimes, I will admit, yes, that can look like a mess, right? So maybe they find the baby wipes and they're ripping them all out. We don't need to throw those away. We can shove them right back in the, in the baby wipe container. Are totally fine, you know? So sometimes it's also like, let's be okay with the mess, if that makes sense. Let them explore and be okay with the exploration and allow them the space. I am a big proponent of really good baby proofing because I believe allowing them the space to explore is so important. And especially, you're in New York City, I'm in LA. We live in small spaces. We don't live in big spaces, And so living in big cities means that sometimes we're rearranging things and we're doing the best we can to create the play space, but you don't need a lot of space. It's just baby proofing the area,
So this would be a way, by just giving them their space, this is a way to integrate sensory play into their just normal playtime. Is that right?
Exactly. If we allow them that space and we live our daily life, we're going to be engaging their senses. But it really starts on the floor. So when I say allow them that space, that means that space on the floor.
Right.
We don't want them in a piece of equipment or any of that. I mean on the floor, and then taking them to parks, things like that. But it doesn't need to be a curated, like, full play date. I mean, you can really just walk to your local park, or walk to a patch of grass, anything like that, with some old recyclables. Those are some of the best toys. We actually want to lay off these high-tech toys. So that really is the best way to engage your sensory system. I'll see a lot of parents when they have a second baby, they try to get their first child to be really, really quiet when baby is napping and really careful. But sometimes that noise of the older sibling is great. Let them watch big sibling dogs. Let them watch the dog and try to chase and get the dog, as long as the dog is
okay with that.
And that's not going to be like a safety issue. But I grew up with Goldens, and they're, so sweet that we could do whatever we wanted to them. So, it's
I just want to try to get my head clear with this. So by getting all 8 senses, including the 5, because when I was reading your stuff and I think somewhere it said 8, I was like, oh, I don't know all of those. I only know my 5 basics. So thank you for explaining the others. So by getting a sense of that, it's going to help their general development and their achieving milestones? Because I know that's something a lot of parents are worried about. Is that correct?
You got it. That's what's going to build the foundation, right? When we talk about tummy time, sometimes I think parents will come and say, oh, I didn't do it. It's too hard, and almost think it's like overhyped. I would almost argue it's underhyped. I don't think that what is recommended is enough. As your baby gets older, it's really important. They're spending a lot of time, obviously during their wake windows, but in tummy time.
Talk about the benefit of that, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's strengthening their back and their neck, but what else is that doing for them?
But think of everything else that happens in tummy time, right? So what is the next thing? They're going to start pushing up on those arms. So sometimes they'll start pushing. You'll see them pushing, and then they're going to figure out how to crawl. So I one time had a parent come to me, and her baby was a little bit delayed in crawling, and she was very worried. And we got talking, and I went to put the baby down on the baby's tummy on our mat, and the baby got really upset. And this was during COVID time. So I had a mask, and it was, an odd time. And I was like, oh, I know it's hard with the masks and different things. And we were talking about it. And she's like, even at home, I have to admit, like, we don't put her in tummy time because I feel guilty. And I feel like I need to be holding her. So this baby actually spent almost no time in tummy time. And then she wasn't crawling, but she never even got the opportunity to practice it, because she was almost never on the floor. So go ahead.
Do we want to help the parents have a little tolerance for the baby's initial discomfort?
This is a good question. So what I always say about this, babies do not like tummy time. And do we like going to the gym? No, right? I know.
I'm the weird person.
But you're a yoga instructor, and I think of you, when I'm in yoga and they have me on my stomach, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't stand this position. Like, when are we out of it? And that's what I think about with babies in tummy time. But I am not a proponent of letting a baby scream and become really, really upset in tummy time. So what I like to do is break up tummy time into much smaller chunks and do it in different ways. So a lot of times babies who won't tolerate tummy time right on the floor, which many of them won't at first, use a yoga ball. Throw a swaddle over the yoga ball, put your baby, on the yoga ball, and give some gentle, very, very gentle, very minimal bounces in some gentle rocks. That's actually using some vestibular input in a very calming way. And a lot of times they'll be able to tolerate tummy time that way. Then you may move to it over your legs, in your arms, in a football hold. So there's many different ways to do tummy time. And so move through these different positions and do it multiple times a day for short bursts instead of a long period. If they can only handle 30 seconds to a minute, great. And then just do it more, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great guideline. That's a really good guideline. And I kind of want to circle back to something you said about not over curating things and some of the toys and equipment. And I love that, like, a yoga ball is so simple, and just letting them crawl around and get used to the space around them. I feel like sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming to be like, what kind of toys and equipment should I get? I remember, like, again, my kids are older, but having like the Lamaze toys and thinking about, okay, here are the different colored toys and here are the different tactile toys. Where should parents start when they're thinking about getting toys and equipment that can support sensory play? And then is there something they should think about when they're buying them? Like, what's important to look out for? What should they know about buying them?
This is an amazing question. So first and foremost, less is more. You really don't need a lot at all. I'm actually going to start, if it works for you can we talk about equipment first and
Sure.
then move
Yeah.
to toys? Cool. So, when it comes to baby equipment, I think parents think when you're registering, I need this and I need that and this. And there's all these things that are marketed to us, and they're marketed well. They're huge companies. They have great marketing teams, right? In fact, some of these things that are marketed to us, and I'm laughing because they'll say right on the box, good for development, when they're actually the opposite of that. And so we do not want what is often called in the therapy world baby containers. What does that mean? What is a baby container? That's any basic piece of equipment that's going to hold your baby. You put them in it and it holds them, right?
Like a swing?
Yeah, that's a baby container.
Okay.
So the big ones that we really don't want are ones that are going to place your child in a position that they cannot hold themselves. So what is that? The jumperoo, the bumbo, the activity centers, the walkers, anything like that. Those are our biggest ones to avoid. And then I understand that sometimes you need a place to place your baby. Something like a very, very simple bouncer. You know what I'm talking about? The one, it's not even.
Oh yeah, we had that. Yeah,
exactly.
We had that. It was I would bounce with my foot. It was basically like a piece of metal that would look like I don't know, it had a little chair in it, and it had a bottom and a support, and that was it. And I would bounce it with my foot.
Yeah, so baby,
and it can go on my countertop.
Yeah,
yeah,
so super simple, and by the way, very inexpensive.
Yes, that's why we had that.
And so that's really the only, if you really need somewhere to place your baby, go for that. I would never, ever, especially the bumbo, go for that. And I think it's becoming more widely known how bad the bumbo is for development. But I do still see it sometimes, those activity centers, anything like that. Remember, we want them on the floor. That's the best place. And people will sometimes ask me, what about those play yards? And a lot of those play yards, it's kind of the same ones that we have for dogs, right? It's like an indoor giant gate that still creates a big play area. If that's what's going to, keep your child safe and that's your way of baby proofing, totally fine, because then you still have a big enough space for them to engage inside. And it's not containing them. It's not putting them in a piece of equipment. Now, of course, when you're eating, you're going to use a high chair and things like that. Make sure they're well positioned in a high chair. I really like the Stokey. Most therapists love the Stokey. It's very popular in the therapy world. It puts the baby in a really nice position. So think about that when you're buying a high chair. And I know it's a higher price point, but remember, you don't need all these other pieces of equipment. So maybe you splurge on that one, And that's going to be the same when we move to toys. So,
so let's dive into toys.
Yeah. So first of all, less is more. Again, that's if you take anything home from this podcast, I hope you take home less is more. Truthfully, the best toy comes out of the recycling bin, right? It's all the babies love the baby wipes and not any of the toys. But what we want to avoid is, in general, toys that require batteries that are electronic. Sometimes when I say toys that are electronic, people immediately think the iPhone, iPad, things like that, but it's beyond that. It's any of those toys that they push and they light up and they have all these sound effects and all of these different things. The reason is a lot of these toys actually play for our children. What do I mean by that? If I have a dog and I just push a button and the dog moves and the dog barks, then my toddler, my baby, doesn't have to actually move the dog and help the dog bark. The same goes for baby Einstein. So good marketing again, right? I always joke about baby Einstein. Most of the baby Einstein toys are these light up, bright, obnoxious things that are flashing in your baby's face, things like that, versus a toy like Love Every, where they're going to have to work to figure out how do I use them? So what are they going to prefer if you give them the two? Probably the baby Einstein toy, but what's going to be better for development? That Love Every toy where they really have to work to figure out how do I use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
this makes sense. I really like this.
Yeah. So that's what we want to focus on. But you also don't want too many toys. And research supports this. We want fewer toys that are more open-ended. This is going to help your child. It's going to support them in playing with the toy for a longer period of time and working through that challenge, figuring out how can I use it in many different ways, right? So that's going to support them in creating those neural connections. That's what we want them to be doing, is figuring out, how do I get that shape in the shape sorter, right? And so versus an electronic thing that I push the button, and toys are changing. They're almost all electronic now. You go to Target, everything is like electronic. You know, we have some gems, like we have magnetiles and things like that, but overall, it's much harder to find these open-ended toys.
Do you have some brands that you like? And I remember having, oh gosh, we had the Habe, we had a ton of Montessori toys. Everything was wood. I was a little crazy about that. There was a couple others like Planet Green, I think it was called, or Green Planet. What are some of your favorite ones?
Yeah, and actually we have a blog too with a list of my favorite brands on our website. It was part of our gift guide. Yeah.
Great. I will make sure we link to that.
Yeah. So I also like Hape, but you pronounced it different than me. I'm not sure.
Oh, is it
you
Hape?
might be correct.
I'm probably wrong.
No clue.
But I'm probably wrong. I think Green Toys was another one.
Green Toys is great. Yep.
Yeah, I remember having I think it was like an alligator on a string that we would pull, and then we had a lot of those type of those are great toys. I really like them.
There's Plan Toys, Love Every.
Oh, yep. Yep.
There is a toy store based out of Brooklyn called Norman and Jules. And overall, I find that they curate a really nice, they have a nice curation of toys. So I really like going and shopping there. And I'm in LA. I just shop online there. But I really, really like their toy selection. And so it's also going to these toy shops that you know have better curated toys. A lot of European brands tend to be a little bit better. And Etsy is one of the best places to get toys. And I don't think people recognize that, but we get a lot off Etsy. And, you know, we try to find as much as we can from these bigger brands that are just a little bit easier to buy from. Of course, I hate to say it, but it is so true that it's easier to buy off Amazon. And, but there are a lot of nice brands like Banner Toys and things like that. So it's finding these little brands. Crate and Barrel, so CB Kids, Pottery Barn, they have a pretty good selection of toys, and they often source from these little brands that you can find these. I really like Pickler triangles, Pickler arches. A lot of those you can get on Etsy. There's a brand here in LA that we love for those. And so kind of looking at where is it coming from, all of that. Some of these bigger brands, Baby Einstein, even Fisher Price. And yes, of course, these are legacy brands that we've had for forever, but it's a lot of electronic toys, you know? So
I guess the takeaway for toys, less is more. If maybe someone's gifted a whole bunch of toys, maybe rotate through them so they're not all there at once, and then stay away from the electronics, because let's face it, when they're older, they're going to be very much with electronics. We don't need to start that so young, in my humble opinion. Is there anything else you want to mention about toys and how to introduce them?
Yeah. So, you know, you hit on a good point. You can rotate toys. And it doesn't have to. Sometimes I think when people hear of toy rotation, they get overwhelmed at the thought of it. You can just have a closet of toys or an under the bed bin of toys and then pull out the other toys. So maybe this week you pull out these toys and then rotate out your toys. There's also a brand called Tiny Earth Toys. They do toy rentables.
Ooh,
and they
smart.
will send them to your house, which is nice.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah. And that's another reason I like Love Every is they just send a box to your house. You can reuse them for all your kids. So save them, keep all the pieces kind of together and save them, put them away, and then you can use them again. And even the combo of like Tiny Earth Toys and Love Every, because each come with a few toys, but you don't need a lot.
This is such great information. Again, I'll make sure in our show notes that we have a lot of these. So if folks are listening and they want to start to look at those, we'll have them there. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you would like to offer new and expectant parents? We'll be right back.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Okay, so which direction are you going to take this? What is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer?
So this is always my tip. Get on the floor. When in doubt, get on the floor and start playing. And so much of engaging with a baby is on the floor. So get on the floor, spend time on the floor with your little one. And this goes up through childhood. We want to be on the floor playing. So what is it going to look like when they're a baby is tummy time, and be tummy to tummy, sing to them. If they're just right alone on tummy time, that's not fun. Lay with them. So you guys are face to face, play with them, engage with them on the floor, right? And then as they get older, that's going to continue to evolve. Mm-hmm. So that is my biggest tip. Get on the floor with your little one. Put your phone to side. And I love when parents have like a set time. It's typically around dinner where they say, okay, I'm going to put phone, I'm going to put work, I'm going to put email to the side. And after bedtime, if I need, I'll pick it back up, But right now I'm going to put this to side. This is a no tech zone. So I'm not going to pick up my phone, any of that. This is just my time to be on the floor, spend time with my babies. Can
I add something to that? Because this is something I did. I was on the floor a lot with them. And I found two things that helped me, because I didn't want to be on my phone all the time, but I found sometimes I was bored, especially as the baby got a little bit older where they're able to sit up and play, but I still wanted to have a lot of playtime and be in the same room and sit on the floor with them. So I had music playing. I'm going to seriously date myself, but I still have an iPod. It's like 20 years old. It's crazy. But I would play my iPod so that I would have music so I wouldn't be bored. And then I would do a little bit of yoga, because I found that especially postpartum, my posture was a hot mess. So I would use that opportunity to recognize I was all schlumped and sitting poorly. And I would do some just basic stuff. And I have my postpartum parents do that now, so that when they're sitting there and like, oh, my back hurts, my neck hurts, it's a great time. And then babies are also seeing the parent do that. So I wanted to add on, because I love that you said get on the floor, and we can use that time, because I do remember being a little bored. But maybe that's just me.
I love that. I love that. And you know what I also love is like, as you're doing that, so when you're doing that and then your little one starts to walk and starts to crawl, guess what they're going to start doing? Imitating you.
Yeah. Little cat cow. Never bad.
Exactly. That's amazing. So I could not agree more with that.
Thank you. So where can people find your work?
Good question. So you can find me at playtoprogress.com. That's the number 2. So play the number 2, progress.com. I also wrote a book all on the sensory system, and it's filled with activities. That is Play TO Progress, and it's sold anywhere where books are sold. So a little confusing. The book is TO, and the company is the number 2. And then if you're here in LA, we would love to have you in one of our studios. I also do virtual consults, like parent consults. If you are interested in just learning a little more about the sensory system, happy to do some parent coaching. I don't do therapy outside of LA, but just, any like, hey, I just want to know about the sensory system or any of that. And then you can also find us on Instagram. So the handle is play2progress.com. And then my Instagram is dr.Allie Ticktin. So at play2progress, at dr.Allie Ticktin.
Thank you, Allie. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm really excited for our community to hear this because I know they want to support their child's growth and development. And you gave some really great information, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Hey there! Did you know Baker's always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Baker's app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Baker's today. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.